Courage. For today, there's a lot of different ways we can define or explain courage. The most important type of courage I believe there is in all of humanity is the courage that is the ability to fight our fear to find common ground. The ability to fight one's fear to find common ground or to advocate for it. This notion of common ground that is essential to Jesus' message and is a hallmark of the early church struggles against our desire as a society to kind of get ahead of each other a little bit. But Jesus calls us to this situation where common ground is, in fact, God's kingdom come on earth, just as it is in heaven. It took Jesus great courage to face that up with the powers that be in his day. Courage. Well, a week or so ago, I was visiting Jim Groot, and it was a wonderful visit. And after I visited him, I had a few other errands to run, and I was wearing my cleric. And Beth said, it's the first Friday in Lent. Why don't you go to the Monaghan Knights of Columbus and get some fish dinners to bring home? And the interesting thing about that, Knights of Columbus, it's very sacred space because that's where Beth and I had our very first date, at the Knights of Columbus, that one, the Monaghan Council. So thinking of my bride as I'm walking in, I have my cleric on, and a lot of Catholics in and out, and everybody says, hey, Father, how you doing, this and that. And anyway, I go into the bar area to order my fish dinners, and it's crowded. It's the first Friday, so they're still not quite. The food's actually very, very good once you get it, so it's a good thing. Anyway, so I'm there, I order the fish dinners, and then I realize it's going to be quite a wait. It was a long wait, but that's okay. So I sat down at a table with 4 or 5 other people, and we got talking, and they said, well, where's your parish? I says, well, I am a Lutheran pastor, and we wear the clerics as well, and they thought that was wonderful. They were familiar with our faith, and they thought that's just fine. As a matter of fact, one of the people at the table across the way from me said, as a matter of fact, I used to attend St. John a long time ago, back when Pastor Cave was pastor, and then I kind of did whatever, and he said, well, maybe I'll show up one of these days. And I said, well, the doors are always open. But anyway, we talked, and I shared some of my life, people sharing their lives, and the guy to the right of me was just a neat guy, and so I asked him, I said, well, what did you do for a living? And he said, well, I was a firefighter. I was a fireman for 25 years. And then I retired about 15 years ago, and it was a great career. I was really glad that that's what I did. And so he said, yeah, I kind of broke stride with my family. My family, they're all educators. They're public school teachers. My mom, my dad, my 3 older siblings are all teachers. We grew up in a strong Catholic family, and we saw the work that we did was an extension of God, trying to help others and make the world a better place through the things that we did. So that was kind of our motivation in doing what we did. But as a little kid, for some reason, I always wanted to be a fireman. And my family supported it. That's cool. Okay, if that's what you want to do. And I became a fireman. And it was the best career I could have imagined. Not to say there wasn't heartache and some terrible things you see. It breaks your heart, some of this stuff. But overall, we did a lot of good. And my motivation was to help people in desperate need. And I said to him, man, that is something. I mean, it takes courage to do something like that. And he said, it does. It's scary. Going into a fire, it's scary business. There's no getting around it. And you have to find a way to work with that. And I said, well, how did you do that? He said, well, first of all, I did pray. I always prayed every day, and I prayed before going into a fire, and I almost felt like I had God with me, kind of with me the whole time. And then he says, what happens is you see the mission as something so much bigger than yourself and the role that you play, and that helped. And then, of course, we get training, and then I'm living with firefighters who've had more experience and back and forth, and we share ideas and how to do these different things, and we learn and we grow, and it's just what you do. And I said, man, that's deep. It's just a deep thing. So obviously I just said, I want to just thank you for your service. My goodness, I mean, we all owe you a debt of gratitude. And it was a powerful thing, this idea of courage. And I see Jesus today in that same light. And Jesus his ministry often is, he's dealing with fear, his own existential fear, in trying to move forward the idea of common good. It's tricky. You see, the idea for common good is met with a relative amount of disdain from those who have much, because there's the recognition that the only way this happens is if I reorient my thinking. Now, the poor, the call for common good, it's not fear or anger, it's hope. Boy, this would be a wonderful thing, you see, if this could happen. Jesus ministers to both groups, of course, but where the fear comes, where the anger comes, is particularly when he's facing those in relative power who have access to much and are unwilling to see the impact of their decisions as problematic in the rest of society. To he who is given much, much is expected. The gift of wealth creates a powerful burden in the kingdom. And so Jesus is confronted by the Pharisees. The Pharisees are fundamentally in the upper 10% in Palestine, and they're trying to either warn him or frighten him, saying Herod, he's got what he's got going, and he wants you dead. And Jesus, he just calls Herod a fox, which is not a real pleasant term and not a term of endearment. And he says, I've got work to do. I'm going to do it here for 3 days. Then I'll move on to Jerusalem where I finish up my assignment. And there's nothing that's going to change that, you see. But in that saying, call that fox, Jesus he's got fear. He's got, his emotions are running hot. Anytime we see someone working in shalom relative to the issue of justice, that's not teddy bear stuff. That's hard stuff. It's scary stuff. And it can sometimes excite powerful emotions. Jesus exhibits this often. But in any event, the good news is he stared Herod down. Of course, he knew Herod couldn't really do much. His jurisdiction was in Galilee, but he couldn't. But Jesus knew once he got to Bethlehem, where the Roman guard is in complete day-to-day control, that's where he would meet his fate under that law. But the courage it took for Jesus, fully man and God, was substantial. And it was always associated with the desire to achieve the common good for all people. In our society, in the world in which we live, there is nothing more challenging for us gathered here throughout our communities. There's nothing more challenging and frightening than trying to unpack the issue and ideal of the common good. God's kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. It takes a reorientation in a culture that does not teach us this. It runs contrary to what we have been taught. And that's not to say that we don't make charitable gifts and we don't share and this type of thing, but the depth of this question is overwhelming, and it's scary. It's scary to the person who attempts to unpack it for him or herself. What does this mean for me? Do I really want to go here? Or do I want to push it away? The job of the pastor is to invite us to think, to explore, and to imagine establishing that kingdom here on earth, and to sort out exactly what our role might be. Through prayer and meditation, these things sort themselves out. Now, it brings me to the 12 steps for a minute. It's probably, I would say, the most excellent spiritual way in modern society. How to see God in our lives, how to commit ourselves to God, step 2. How to turn our will in life over to the care of God, step 3. And once we do that, how to have the courage to look at ourselves squarely in the mirror, to let go of the fear associated with us taking a deeper look at who we are. In AA, it's called step 4, taking a fearless moral inventory. Fearless. Because you can't take one without being fearless. You have to let go of that fear, and we're all different. We have different things to look at. But we have, in the background, we have this loving God that's right there with us to help us, to guide us, to forgive us, to strengthen us. And as we look at that inventory, as we look at our life, the great things we've done, and we've all done wonderful things, but also the things we've left undone, the challenges that we have, the people that we've hurt, the society that we have helped or didn't help make better. But the beauty of this, my friends, is we can do this with a certain type of boldness. We can do this because we are empowered to do this. And then to take all of the next steps in building out a life that sheds ourselves of some of these fears, making it infinitely more easy to unpack this common good motif. It is the tallest, most scary mountain in our life. But there's an opportunity for an extraordinary adventure. The good news for us is that we have the opportunity, particularly right now in the season of Lent, where we are being more introspective and thoughtful about our faith, how we work in it individually and collectively. And we can hold out the hope that we can truly make a difference in this world. And not to say that we haven't already, but that there's even that much more. The kingdom gets bigger and bigger and bigger once we allow ourselves to open up and to really dive into the deep waters of peace. So I invite you this week to reflect on how I can become more engaged in this issue of the common good, and to know that you are very much loved. And I mean it, and to know that God's kind of depending on all of us. God is. We are God's hands and feet. But we're strengthened today through the Holy Meal, and that's a very good thing. Don't you think? Amen.